Today, we're going to talk about a vulnerability discovered by the Pride security team. This vulnerability was identified in two distinct tests. One of them was a physical penetration test with extension to the internal environment. The other test involved security validation of a laptop sent by a client. Notably, one of the consultants who discovered this vulnerability and worked on this second project is Gilson Camelo. Congratulations, Gilson. Well done. The affected company is eTrust. eTrust is a company with over 20 years in the market, offering services and products in the area of information security, with clients in over 10 countries, such as the United States, Mexico, Chile, Spain, Argentina, among others. It has clients listed on the B3, the Brazilian stock exchange, as well as some customers on the New York Stock Exchange, including those listed in the renowned Fortune 500, Fortune 100, and Fortune Global 500. In essence, major corporations are impacted by this vulnerability. We're referring to a product known as Horacius. It is an identity management system and access developed by eTrust. One of the functionalities of this system is the management of passwords, where the user can reset their password once they have forgotten it or unlock it. The versions affected by this vulnerability start at version 1.0 and go up to version 1.2. The manufacturer has stated that the vulnerability was corrected in version 1.3. However, it is important to emphasize that Pride Security has not validated this correction. As we can observe, the Horacius solution adds a button in the lower left corner of the Windows screen when it is locked. Imagine that you are an employee of a company that uses the Horacius solution. When you click on this button labeled "Forgot or Lock My Password," it asks for your username. Then you enter your username and proceed with the required steps. And in this way, you can unlock or reset your password without having to call help desk or support. Thus, it is a solution that greatly facilitates life besides being a security solution. For this to work, it is essential that the Horacius can communicate with its server, the Horacius server. And that's exactly what we are going to explore in this vulnerability. Imagine a scenario where an attacker steals a laptop on a subway. For example, in the São Paulo subway. When the attacker takes this laptop elsewhere, the connectivity won't exist. Consequently, this vulnerability can be trivially exploited. However, a simple way to exploit this vulnerability within a corporate environment is by using the native Windows feature that allows users to put the computer in airplane mode. As we can see, we click on Windows, it is in airplane mode, then we enter the name of a user. It could be any user. In this case, I used admin, and then a screen is loading, that is, from the Horacius application. We can notice that this screen is taking a long time to load, and this is exactly due to the lack of connectivity. An error screen was displayed, and we can see a message saying, navigation to the page was cancelled, and below we have a button saying, refresh the page. When we click on this button, we are redirected to a new screen, this time saying, can't reach this page. And below, we have a new button called Search for this site on Bing. By clicking this button and holding down the Shift key, Internet Explorer will launch, giving us a wide range of options to run unauthorized commands on the computer. Just to illustrate, pressing Ctrl S while still in Internet Explorer will open the Save As dialog, allowing us to save the current page. Consequently, this dialog window enables us to navigate through the file system. Besides, we can navigate to the path C drive, Windows, System32, and execute commands like CMD, PowerShell, or any other command that the attacker desires. For this example, we initiate CMD and input the Who Am I command. This action confirms that we have the highest privileges available, identified as NT Authority System. In summary, imagine a scenario where someone steals a laptop equipped with the Horacius solutions from eTrust. Even if this computer employs a robust full-disk encryption solution and the attacker lacks a username to log in, the mere presence of the Horacius solution enables an attacker to effortlessly execute high-privilege commands on the operating system, thereby compromising it with elevated privileges. As we mentioned at the beginning of this video, this vulnerability was also found during a physical penetration test. At this point, we could already end this video. After all, we have already explained the vulnerability known as CVE-2024-29417. However, it is very common for Pride employees to ask, what are physical penetration tests like? After all, not everyone has had the opportunity to do this type of work. It is also very common for clients to ask, how do you conduct these tests? For those interested, I will discuss 2 examples of real attacks that I executed during this type of exercise. The first is an example of a test that was conducted with one of the clients of Pride Security, where everything started normally, as most physical tests do, that is, with observation. We were observing as people arrived to work, employees passed their badges. The turnstile opened and they had access to the restricted area. Third parties arrived, identified themselves at the reception, took a QR code ticket, passed it at the turnstile by the security guard, and also had access to the restricted area. We continued observing. What caught our attention is that around lunchtime, several employees went down and left normally, as did the third parties, who used the QR code ticket, but instead of throwing it in the trash, they folded the QR code ticket and put it in their pocket. This caught our attention. After all, it's not a common behavior. We continued waiting and monitoring. Upon their return from lunch, we observed these third parties taking tickets from their pockets. They opened them, approached the security guard, passed through the turnstile, and gained access to the company. And this caught our attention, as it is not common. The common procedure from a security standpoint is that after lunch, that is, after an entry and an exit, the person should return to reception, identify themselves again, and get a new QR code ticket. This is the most common in all environments. And why did this catch our attention? This QR code ticket allowed multiple entries and exits within the same day. The first thing we did at this point was to start looking for a trash can near where we were. We started rummaging through this trash can and found some QR code tickets. Among them, we found some that were dirtier, others very crumpled, torn, until we found one that was acceptable. As we can see in this case, we straightened out this QR code ticket and headed towards the turnstile. We greeted the security guard, passed this ticket through the turnstile opened, and voila, we had access to the restricted environment. From there, we took an elevator, went to the restricted areas, and so on, including being able to use a technique known as tailgating. Tailgating simply involves following closely behind someone who has authorized access. In other words, it's the act of slipping through a secure entrance in someone else's wake, bypassing security measures. So let's take an example. Imagine there is a door with an access control system. An authorized person arrives in front of this door, places their finger on the digital recognition, unlocks the door, opens it, and passes. When the door is closing, the attacker comes very close, holds the door before it closes, and slips through behind them. This technique, known as tailgating, involves the attacker taking advantage of the brief moment when the door is still open to quietly follow the authorized person inside. Let's examine another real-life example that we employed in an attack. Here, we are positioned very close to a company's entrance. Observe as an employee with a badge passes by. We positioned ourselves very close to him. As the employee began to pass through the turnstile, we moved in sync as though we were one single person. This coordinated movement allowed us to effortlessly enter the restricted area. From now on, we will take the elevator, go up, and have access. This type of attack works in a variety of environments. For example, this particular turnstile does not have a mechanism in place to prevent such an attack. However, there are some turnstiles that sound a beep or alarm when 2 people attempt to pass through simultaneously. This alert draws the attention of the security guard, effectively inhibiting this type of attack. Well, we could spend an entire afternoon talking about this type of vulnerability, that is, attacks in physical environments, but that is not our goal. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and leaving a comment below with suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover in future videos. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to us and helps us create content that you want to see. Thanks for watching.